We're,
So good to see you all. Um, we're going to begin, as usual, with a few recitations of prayers, trying to think of the meaning of them. And then we're going to continue, as always, with a little bit of meditation. So Richard is our host. He's going to put up the prayers, which you know, so you probably don't really need them. Sangye churang suki chognam la, changchu badu dagni kapsu chi, dagi chunyen gipe sognam ki, drola penchir sangye drupa shog. I go for refuge until I am enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. Through the collections I create, through listening to the Dharma, may I become a Buddha in order to benefit all migrating beings or all wandering beings. I've been thinking about this recently because so many prayers have drola, even when or droa when it's referring even to Buddhas. Usually, droa means people who are wandering or migrating through the six realms, but sometimes it seems to include all beings. So I'm thinking there might be an esoteric explanation of uh, droa. Sangye churang soki chognam la jangchu badu dagni kapsuchi dagi chunyen gipe sognam ki drola penche sangye rupa sho sashi poki chukshing meto tram ri rab lingji ni de gyan padi sangye shingdu mikte uagi troku nam dakshing la chupasho. O holy and perfect pure Lama, from the clouds of compassion that form in the skies of your Dharmakaya wisdom, please release a rain of vast and profound Dharma precisely in accordance with the needs of those to be trained. Idam Guru Rana Mandalakam Niryatayami. Okay, thank you. So good to see you all. I'm not sure. There we go. Good to see you all. Anna has arrived. David is here. Karen's here. Good to see you. So we're going to begin with a little meditation. Relax your body. When you do by yourself, you can even scan your body, as you know, different kinds of ways. You can scan your body, as is well known in the Western traditions. Um, but also you can use the tantric visualizations of empty body. That doesn't mean emptiness, but visualizing your body is just uh, made of light and relaxing all of the muscles and so forth of your body. Also relax your mind. Place your attention on the respiration, the breathing in front. Once you recognize it, hold it in mindfulness to the exclusion of everything else. use that part of your mind that we call alertness, like a mental spy, a little portion of your mental consciousness watching whether you're deviating, whether you're kind of multitasking, thinking of other things, and take your attention away from those wrong objects, like in the Yondan Shurgirma, where it says, refers to those kinds of objects that are wrong in the sense that they prevent you from concentrating, developing tranquil abiding, and invest that energy, that mental energy, back into the breathing, mindfulness of the respiration. Remind yourself that you're not paying attention to the eye consciousness, although it may be filtering through as though your mental consciousness is paying attention to it, but it's not that you're paying attention to, not your ear consciousness, not your nose and tongue consciousness. Maybe your tactile consciousness to some degree, but mainly, recognizing the breathing through the tactile consciousness. Is that which is light and moving, lightweight, opposite of heavy.
Last time I saw her.
And having calmed the mind a little from the thoughts that were present before class, place your attention on the mental consciousness instead. One way of sort of ignoring, getting away from attention to the eyes, the ears, the nose, consciousnesses, and so forth, is to imagine withdrawing your winds from them to your heart chakra, where their mental consciousness mainly abides. Not the only place. The mental consciousness abides everywhere, but a special place, like a turtle or tortoise withdrawing its limbs into its shell. Recognizing what's in your mind, not just blackness. There are thoughts of the past and present, future, observations of the present, plans about the future, memories of the past, other thoughts that come up, feelings. Your mind sometimes pays attention to the feelings in your body or your mental feeling. All of those are content of your mental consciousness, and their presence there reminds us of the clear light nature of the mind, the conventional clear light nature of the mind, the fact that they can enter abide and absorb back into the consciousness. This is called the conventional clear light nature of the mind, also called the developmental Buddha nature. Think that we can recognize this now and feel joyful in having it due to the fact that we have this auspicious moment. We've arrived at this auspicious moment. It means not just this one instant now, but this life, which is like an instant through the entirety of rebirths in cyclic existence. We have a life of leisure and endowment. Everything we need to practice the Dharma. So we should set up shop, so to speak. Use this opportunity while we have it. Not simply to follow the 5 worldly dharmas, not merely to accumulate wealth or power or pleasure, to be renowned, to be loved, and so forth. But to end this cycle of rebirth within cyclic existence, okay, minimally to create the karma to be born as a human in future lifetimes, but that will have an end. We have circled in cyclic existence since beginningless time, always under the influence of the 3 poisonous minds, sort of a condensation of all of the various mental factors. We've suffered in the deepest hells, numberless times, as ghosts, as hungry ghosts, as pretas, as animals, so many different ways in different world systems. We've been born as humans, of course, in much less auspicious circumstances, as slaves or essentially enslaved in countries, lands where the Buddha, the Dharma, religion was not allowed. We've been born as desire realm gods, form realm gods, formless gods, all of them. But they've all ended, just as this life will end. To put an end to this constant recycling within cyclic existence to achieve nirvana would be a great goal. But having heard the Mahayana teachings, being incredibly fortunate to hear the Buddha's admonition that those with intelligence should not be satisfied with his lesser vehicle teaching, that they should aim for the Mahayana, the great vehicle that takes ourself to the great destination of enlightenment and is big enough to carry all sentient beings to that goal. Twofold aspect of Buddhacita, to aim for enlightenment, and then the second aspect, for the welfare of sentient beings. Or you can put it the other direction, for the welfare of sentient beings, aiming to achieve enlightenment. That state where we can constantly, forever, until samsara ends, help sentient beings flawlessly, effortlessly, spontaneously. The achievement of this state, even the wish for the achievement of that state, is incredibly virtuous, but the achievement of this state requires accumulation of the 2 collections of merit and wisdom, which we are now beginning to understand. Maybe we've understood a little bit about the collection of merit, doing good deeds, knowing from the New Testament that you reap what you sow and so forth. But in more detail in the Buddhist teachings, collection of merit that acts as a cooperative cause to achieve Rupakaya, form bodies of the Buddha, and the collection of wisdom, understanding of emptiness that act as a cooperative cause, along with the clear light nature of the mind as a substantial cause of the Dharmakaya. The methods to understand these, to enhance our ability to collect these, to accumulate these two collections, are explained in the Buddhist sutras, Prajnaparamita sutras especially, in Nagarjuna's Fundamental Wisdom, and Chandrakirti's commentaries, his meaning commentary to Fundamental Wisdom, Madhyamakavatara, and his word commentary, the Prasanapada, the clearly worded Lama Tsongkhapa's commentary to Chandrakirti's Madhyamakavatara, Ompa Rapsal, Illumination of the Intention, is a material we're studying. So think, I'm going to pay attention today with all of this in mind. My goal is to achieve enlightenment for the sake of sentient beings, and entering in, especially in this practice of listening to the teachings, contemplating, meditating on them, to achieve the two collections. I'm going to participate today in order to become enlightened for the sake of all sentient beings. Okay, yeah, good to see you. Hi, Mikhail, you joined us. KT is here. Yeah, Anna. So, how are you doing? Everybody okay? Any questions? Any lingering questions or dharma itches you'd like to be? You like the dharma scratch or some dharma chamomile, I guess, is it? Or I'm going to confuse it with chamomile tea, what is it?
Calamine.
Calamine. So, anyone? KT has a small itch there, I can see.
Thank you, Venerable George and everyone. My small itch, going back to the beginning of this chapter, and you quoted Geshe Sopa in part of the motivation on the Ayur Deva's verse 350, which says, opens with the awareness that is the seed of existence, has objects in the sphere of its activity. And that the awareness that is the seed of existence, how does that relate to the awareness of our clear light meditation when we're kind of like the spy in the corner, or the introspective awareness, like relating to the clear light of the mind? Like, are those the same awarenesses?
I don't have that. That's far enough in my memory that I don't remember exactly. So, what was the commentary there for what is meant by the seed of awareness there?
Yeah, the awareness is the seed of existence. So I think it's kind of thinking of the 12 links, the awareness of the seed of existence. It was, yeah, it just came to me earlier today. I was contemplating what you said about that, going into this whole chapter, and then while meditating, thinking, what is the awareness that is the seed of existence, and how do we define that introspective awareness when we're meditating? Like we're like this.
So what comes to mind at this moment, and it may be for the discussion group on Monday, I'll go back and look at that and see what the commentary is on that. Almost sounds like that is referring to ignorance. So is ignorance an awareness, Katie?
It's kind of like a non-awareness, or a
So does the word awareness,
delusional awareness? I guess it is an awareness, but it's
so
a
usually
cloud.
awareness, these three synonyms, we were talking about this in class the other day. In the Vedic tradition, different words for mind and awareness and so forth had different meanings, but in Buddhism they had the same. So awareness, knowing, and cognition are synonyms. So they correspond to all things. They don't necessarily mean good awareness, even though almost sounds like to be aware sounds like it must be good, right?
Mhm.
But so it could be that that's referring to the first link of the 12 links, which is the seed of cyclic existence. But I will check for you, and if you have time to join us on Monday for the discussion group, I'll see if I can elaborate on that.
Thank you.
Yeah, okay, good. Anyone else? I thought someone was about to put up their hand. Stephen, were you about to put up your hand before?
Oh, I thank you, Venerable George. No, I was just looking at that was an interesting question. I was looking at the commentary. I think Ruth Sonam and Geshe Sonam wrote it for verse 350.
Right.
And it says, the seed of worldly existence is destroyed and one attains liberation by seeing that these objects lack an inherently existent self.
Right.
So to me, that seems like here the awareness is ignorance.
It would seem like that, yeah. I'll go back and check, but thanks for that. Thanks for checking. What verse was that in the 400 stanzas?
That was 350, right, KT?
Yes, 350. And you had like a Geshe Sopa commentary on that too.
Right, right. So interestingly, by coincidence, one of my dear friends, students, Sui Kim in Singapore, just messaged me this morning that he'd received teachings on the 400 stanzas in Singapore from Geshe Damdul. You know Geshe Damdul, maybe some of you. And he said, oh, it's a very tough text. And so I'll have to get back to him about that also. Okay, so one thing I wanted to mention before we begin is something I've mentioned before, how when your mind is imbued with study and meditation, hearing, contemplating, meditating on the Dharma, reading it and so forth, thinking about it all the time, you see manifestations of the teachings in your life when things happen. You know the famous story I've told several times of Milarepa going down to the stream with his one clay bowl to get some water in order to come back to his cave to make some nettle soup. You remember this story? Several times I mentioned. And when it broke, instead of being, totally upset like I would, like shouting some expletive or something, he was joyous and saying, this reminds me that this body and mind that are right now existing, they're fragile. They're, when we talk about death, when we talk about the time of death being impermanent, one of the points is that this body and mind are very fragile, and that, a virus or a car accident or a cut or an infection or something like that, or so many different causes could bring about the, untimely death. So when I was, there was been a lot of rain around here lately, and one tree adjacent to my driveway had bent over. It was a very flexible tree due to being ensnared with, what are these vines that go around the trees? Karen, you're nodding. What are those called?
Kudzu. Kudzu.
I'm not sure if it's kudzu here, but it's something, yeah, you know what kudzu is. But this is sort of a black vine that it itself doesn't have any leaves, apparently. Very few, like kudzu does. And it had, because of the mass of that and other things that had died as a result of it, the tree had bent over. So I spent a good hour or more with the shears and saw cutting off these dead things, and the tree began to go up again. And all this time I was thinking, I remember Geshe Nawan Darge teaching at the Library of Tibetan Works and Archives, saying that our afflictions, our delusions, they interact with one another. They curl up like a tangled ball of yarn. That's the memory I had of him, and that in order to get out of that, our cycles of depression and self-deprecation and, or over-excitement when we have attachment, or, all of the various things that arise in our mind, the jealousy, the anger, the resentment, all of those things are interconnected. And in order to get to them, you have to sort of rip them off, cut them off, or unravel them one by one. And even if you only make a little progress in unraveling them, and you may still be plagued by some, afflictive state of mind, that you're getting closer to that goal. So I saw that too. As I began to cut off some of these things, the tree began to, because it was still flexible. It was like a young sapling, I guess you might call it, although quite tall. It started to go up again so that I could get my car through the road. And as I cut off more and more of it, I realized I couldn't get up. I didn't have the right equipment to get up right at the base of the tree where this vine had ensnarled it in order to cut it off at the root. So no, what would be for us to cut off at the root all of these ensnarling emotions that interact with one another? Because we have attachment, and our wishes are not fulfilled, we get angry, we get jealous when others have it. We get angry when we see other people harming others and so forth. The root of all that is ignorance, grasping at our own self, grasping at a self of phenomena. And in order to cut that, even though we can't cut that right now, we can start to, as we start to understand emptiness, as our understanding gets better and better, as we develop concentration, eventually being able to subdue these afflictions and maybe even cut the root when we realize emptiness directly. We need to be able to get rid of these other afflictions that are preventing us from even getting to that root, right? So it's very noble bodhisattva work to be working on your afflictions, even though it's not, through meditation on emptiness, applying other antidotes like the antidote of my cutting the vines and separating them by hand and so forth and so on. And it takes a lot of work, mental work, just like it was a lot of work to pull all those vines off. So anyway, I wanted to share that with you, and hope that you will, through your constant thinking about the Dharma, that you will begin to see analogs in everyday life. When you're, for instance, when the coffee that you expected to put into your coffee maker and you look in the can, oh, it's gone. And you realize, like that, the time of death is constantly approaching. And even though with every spoon of coffee you took out, you still thought there was lots left. With every instant now, every day that passes, you think, oh, there's plenty of lifetime left. But at a certain point, you'll reach the end. Okay, things like that. So I just wanted to share that with you. So, yeah. So we are at the point in Thupten Jinpa's translation called A Specific Refutation of Arising from Others. Is that right? I think that's where we are. Yeah. John, do you know which page that is, or anyone can tell the page for those who I don't have the book?
Yes, in the hardcover, it's at the bottom of 214 in Thupten Jinpa's translation.
Thupten Jinpa's, and in the FPMT, it's about 115, 116, something like that. So just before that, I just wanted to mention one thing. There was this example of just after verse 616, verse 16 of the 6th chapter, the commentary in Jinpa's translation said, just as, for example, you do not think of barley, pistils, kesara, of lotus, kimshuka flowers, and so on account of just being other and so forth. So there's a famous prayer, when we talked about what the word was in the text that was translated as pistils. So the actual Tibetan word is Zeu Kesar. Kesar is what usually we translate as pistols.
That's the Sanskrit word is kesara.
Kesara. Okay, thank you for the pronunciation. Kesara. So that refers generally to pistols, which is, as Brother Sean had mentioned last week, is the male part of the flower that comes up, right? So there is
No, the female. The male is the pollen.
But the thing that has the pollen is the pistil that stands up, right? I thought that's what Sean was explaining to us.
No, the pistil is receiving the pollen from the stamina or etamine. Yeah, stamina.
Oh, I'm putting it the wrong way? I thought the stamen was the, okay, let's see here. Right, it should be the stamens, right? Excuse me, right? It should be the stamens, which is the male organ, sort of standing upright, right? That has the pollen in it. The pistil is something below that receives the pollen, is sort of the female organ, right? Thank you, Mikhail, for correcting my usual mistake. So there's a fair, if you say, I've never heard this word before, Gesar. Have any of you ever encountered the 7-line prayer to Padmasambhava? Many of you, yeah, I'm sure. Suvash, do you recite every day?
Yes, every day, Venerable George.
Without fail. Do you recite it in Tibetan or just in English or some other language?
It's only 7 lines. I know the Tibetan.
Okay, good. Yeah. So in that prayer, which I also recite because received from His Holiness the Dalai Lama many years ago in Bodh Gaya. So it usually goes, Hung, Ugyen, Yugi, Nukcham Sam. I'm going to have to put on my other glasses here. Pema Gesar Tongbala. So Pema Gesar means on the what's the right word? The stamen of a lotus. Yasin Shoki Ngurubnye. Pema Jungne Shesu Drak. Kordu Kandro Mangpo Kor. Keiki Jesu Dagdrupgi. Jingi Lapshia Shesu So. Sheksu So. Guru Pedma Siddhi Hung, Guru Pedma Siddhi Hung, Guru Pedma Siddhi. So that usually translated something like this. Hung in the northwest land of Udiana, or in other translations, in the northwest border of the land of Urgen. In one translation says, in the heart of a lotus flower. Another translation on an English site says, on the pistil of a lotus. But anyway, let me finish it first. So this is the question I'm going to raise. You attained wondrous supreme cities, the wondrous supreme city of enlightenment. You were renowned as the lotus born, surrounded by a vast retinue of dakinis. I practice following in your footsteps. Come and grant your blessings, I pray. Guru Padma Siddhi Hum, Guru Padma Siddhi Hum. So one translation has Gesar as pistil, whereas we would say that usually it means the stamen, the male, the thing that sticks up. So in one sense, you think of Padma Sambhava. Why is he called Padma Sambhava? Does anyone know?
He was born from a lotus.
From a lotus. Mikhail, where was he born from the lotus? On the top of the lotus?
No idea.
On the pistils. So the pistils are standing up. I'm sorry, the stamens are standing up. The pistil is down below. So this one, the pistil is the female. So it's sort of the translate. I'm not sure if this one Nyingma translation that translates Gesar as pistil is referring to the fact that he's on the female part of the flower, sort of like some kind of secret implication there of union with a consort or something like that. But at any rate, Padmasambhava was known as the lotus-born one. So he wasn't born from a womb. He wasn't born spontaneously or for heat or from heat and moisture like insects and so forth. He was born from a lotus. So I just wanted to share that with you. And in your translations of that, Suvash, into English, what do you have?
In the Pema Gesar Dongpo La is translated here in my translation from the Payul Nyingma lineage, is in the pollen heart of a lotus.
Oh, okay. So it sounds like it's taking it as the female part, yeah? Pollen, at the pollen heart, that almost could be either. kind of heart being the female, what is it, the pistil below, or the pollen meaning the stamen. Anyway, I just wanted to bring that up for you. So more complications to our lives. Okay, so in our text, a specific refutation of arising from other. Haven't we already refuted arising from other? We did extensive refutation of arising from self, and we've been talking about refuting arising from other, but now there's a specific refutation of that. This has two parts. Refuting arising from other, where cause and effect are regarded as sequential. So the cause coming before the effect, right? And second, refuting arising from other, where cause and effect are regarded as simultaneous. Are cause and effect simultaneous? Don?
I think of them as sequential.
Usually we think of them as sequential, right? So usually that's a refutation in all of the tenet systems that cause and effect are simultaneous. Say, for instance, even in some of the tenets when they talk about simultaneously acting cause, that is refuted by the upper tenets. Okay, but anyway, so those are the two outlines. So the first one, refuting arising from other, where cause and effect are regarded as sequential. This has two parts, of course. The first, the actual refutation. It means the refutation of arising from others where cause and effect are regarded as sequential, and rejecting objections raised against the refutation. Again, this similar kind of back and forth. We refute something and then some other Buddhist or non-Buddhist school has some objections to our refutation of arising from other, and then we refute that, we reject that. Okay, so actual refutation. Up till now, for the sake of argument, we have engaged in refutation based on taking the otherness established by intrinsic characteristic as known to the opponent as if it were to exist. Does that make sense?
No.
Someone said no. Don said no? Did you say no, Don?
Yeah. I have to grok the words a bit.
Okay, so let's look at the FPMT translation of that phrase. FPMT Venerable Jones translation says on page 114, therefore, having briefly expressed the quote other, which is established by way of its own entity, renowned to other disputants. So therefore, having briefly expressed the other established by way of its own entity, which is renowned to other disputants. So that means the people that hold that phenomena are inherently existent. That's almost all of the lower Buddhist schools, right? And it is renowned to them, having briefly expressed the other, inherently existent other, which is renowned or sort of like cherished by these lower schools, as if it were established. We're then going to reject it. In the Tibetan says drup drup tar. John, do you know what drup drup? When you have two words, when you have a word repeated, I say two words repeated, be four words, right? If you have a word repeated, like drup means established. Drup drup tar, what would that mean? Usually that's intensifying it somehow when you say drup drup. So drup drup tar means as if it were established. Is renowned to others. We've treated it up till now, as Thupten Jinpa's text had said, as if it were to exist, as if it were existing. That's how we treated it up till now in our refutations. Now, and in fact, we said, if it existed that way, then there couldn't be connection and so forth and so on, right? We were taking it, that was our basis. Now, the following is stated to demonstrate that intrinsic otherness is, in fact, impossible with respect to cause and effect. Inherently existent other is impossible. So this quotes then verse 17 from the Madhyamakavatara Karikas. A sprout does not exist at the same time as the seed. So without its correlate, how can the seed be other? So the Tibetan, the FPMT says, sprout and seed do not exist simultaneously. Without otherness, how can the seed be other? So what Jinpa is taking is correlate means other. Without its other, a sprout does not exist at the same time as the seed. So without its other partner, its correlate, how could the seed be other? Does that make sense? Does the seed exist at the same time? Does the sprout exist at the same time as the seed?
Not if it's the same continuum.
Not if it's the same continuum? Why not?
I mean, there are sprouts that exist simultaneous with unrelated seeds.
Right. But yeah, right. Good point. Okay. But if you're talking about the seed, which is of the continuum of that becomes the sprout,
We don't say that
the
they
sprout
exist at
is
the
there,
same
the
time.
seed is no longer called a seed. May say have some remnants that look like the seed still, some parts of it there, but it's no longer called a seed. So if a sprout does not exist at the same time as a seed, so without its correlate, we're talking about the sprout, without the seed, which is its other, how can the seed be other? Or looking at the seed rather. So the sprout does not exist at the same time as seed. So you're talking about the seed that will become the sprout. So the sprout is not yet there when the seed is there. So without its other counterpart, the sprout, how can the seed be called other? As it is not established that the sprout arises from the seed, you should discard the view that things arise from other. So who's saying that? Anna, what do you think? Who's this statement, this verse 617? Sometimes it's the opponent's view, the non-Prasangika, sometimes it's Prasangika view. This verse is what? The Prasangika view or someone else's view?
Prasangika.
Okay. Anna probably heard you. I was asking Anna. Okay. Looks like the Prasangika view, right? Okay. Then the commentary says, for example, in the case of examples, the word example coming twice there. For example, in the case of examples of already existing Maitreya and Upagupta, it is only on the basis of their contrast with each other that we perceive one to be different from the other. So we're talking about two human beings here, right? We're not talking about the future Buddha Maitreya. We're talking about, because Maitreya is, at the time of the Buddha, was a very common name in India, not just the future Buddha. And another human being called Upagupta. Okay, so you see two different people. They're existing at the same time. And you can see that they're different from one another, right? That's easy, right? Then the text continues. In contrast, a sprout does not exist at the same time as the seed. We were just talking about. If the seed is there, if you say the seed is existing, the sprout is not yet come, because the sprout will only come when the seed is no longer existing. Following? Don? I don't know. Okay. Can we grok that? So it is only on the basis of their contrast. In contrast, a sprout does not exist at the same time as its seed, because without the transformation of the seed's form, without its disintegration essentially and transforming into the sprout, there is no sprout at all. So the seed and the sprout don't exist at the same time. They're not simultaneous. Right. Someone was just noting that I took some blood pressure medication. They're observant. Nadine, making sense? A seed and sprout are not simultaneous? This means what?
Yes, it makes sense. I think so, yes.
They're not simultaneous, right?
Mhm.
Okay. So there is in the seed no otherness from the sprout that exists by virtue of its own essence. So the point is, it's saying that in order to call something other, like Upagupta is other than Maitreya, is different than Maitreya, and Maitreya is other than Upagupta, is different. They have to exist at the same time for you to see that contrast, that difference in them. Okay, that's what Jimba's translating. Contrast is what we usually translate as difference, or tate. There is in the seed no otherness from the sprout that exists by virtue of its own essence, and without its correlate, without its other, how can the seed be truly other than the sprout? So if they don't exist at the same time, you can't call one other than the other, one different than the other than the other. Making sense? Don, have you grokked this?
I'm still grokking.
Yeah, I'm like you. It takes me a long time to grok. Once I've grokked it, at least I can hold it for some time. Making sense? Anyone confused? Okay, no one's admitting to being confused. Okay, that's good. I'm not sure if that's good. Yeah, Richard.
The more I think about it, the more confused I get. I thought I
good.
understood it. So maybe you should go, maybe if you don't mind going over it again, I'd be grateful.
Okay.
Because certainly I'm other than George Washington. And George Washington and I don't exist at the same time.
Right.
So I can't see why a sprout can't be other than a seed, merely because they don't exist at the same time.
Okay, so this is the premise here that is being talked about. When we talk about otherness, it requires a simultaneity in order to see the contrast. So when you say that you are different than George Washington, you are comparing yourself with the mental image of George Washington, which can be contemporary, which can be simultaneous with you now. But it's kind of, you're not actually seeing George Washington or hearing him or something, right? You may see him in a painting crossing, what did he cross? The Delaware or whatever. You may see him in the painting and say, yeah, I'm different than actually, I look quite a bit like George Washington. But it's right now, what you're comparing yourself to is a mental image of George Washington, which can be simultaneous with you now. But we're talking about the seed and the sprout. We're not talking about a mental image of the sprout or the seed. We're talking about the actual entities. So in a certain sense, we'll see when we talk about the Prasangika, they are kind of simultaneous. The transformation of the seed or its disintegration, while it's disintegrating, the sprout is arising. Those two things are simultaneous. This is a subtle point that's coming later in a quotation from the Rice Seedling Sutra that is coming maybe at today or in the next class. So right now we're saying that because a seed and a sprout are not simultaneous, if the seed is there, it hasn't disintegrated, then the sprout is not there yet. So it can't be simultaneous with it. When the sprout is there, the seed is already gone. You know, you can say there's some remnants of the seed, but it's transformed, generally it's transformed into the sprout. There may be some little things in the ground, the husk of the seed or something there, but that's not called the seed. Okay, so there is in the seed no otherness from the sprout that exists by virtue of its own essence. There's no inherently existing otherness from the sprout. And without its different partner, you know, when you talk about the two things being other, seed and sprout, without its correlate, how can the seed be truly other than the sprout? And then the statement says it cannot. So this is kind of like Tibetan and Sanskrit have similar kind of things. It says kalayu. It says, how could it be? It can't. In English, we sometimes might use some kind of construction like that also, but sometimes we just say it can't be. John, what were you thinking?
I had a couple of thoughts. One is just in a certain, I feel that the argument is a little bit cheeky because it's saying that for something at this point, the Prasangika is saying for something to be for otherness requires simultaneity, but he's
actually the lower tenets also accept this.
right. Okay.
Okay, but
Okay.
go on. So
And
it's not just cheeky on the Prasangika part, but
so I actually, yeah, I'm not sure why I thought it was cheeky, except that he's proposing something that also in another context he would reject, because he also rejects otherness based upon, you know, an inherently existing other, even if something's simultaneous.
right. Even whether it's simultaneous or not, we
Right.
we reject otherness, inherent existent otherness. We had other reasonings. So this brings up to
But they only actually then my only actual question here was about this. It seems like the key word then is right in the middle of the paragraph where it refutes otherness of the sprout existing by virtue of its own essence.
right.
Because commonsensically, you can say where there's a sprout and you can reasonably expect it to become, if there's a seed and you can reasonably expect it to become a sprout, you've seen that happen before, you've taken all the right measures for it to happen, you talk about it commonsensically like it's another thing that will happen. But he's using the specialized language of the Prasangika to attack its intrinsicity or its inherentness,
right. Yeah, good point. So we do casually say that it will, well, what would we say? The seed will transform into something other than itself.
Mm-hmm.
But that already implies, if you say it that way, that already implies the seed is gone when it transforms into something else. So the otherness is what we're talking about here. So just to look, if you compare with the FPMT translation, Venerable Jones translation, Maitreya and Upagupta are seen to be other, by saying he is other than him. Different ways of translating this tricky kind of very short Tibetan phrase, in mutual dependence upon one another. Whereas sprout and seed do not exist simultaneously, because without the transformation of the seed, the sprout does not exist. That's clear enough, right? Now that we've gone over that. Then she continues in translating, the seed does not exist as an otherness than the sprout, established by way of its own entity. Full stop. She's not connecting the two phrases as in Jimpa's translation. The seed does not exist as something other than the sprout, established by way of its own entity. So in other ways, we've said, different ways of saying it. The seed and the sprout are not inherently other. That's something that we've established earlier, right? Without that, how can the seed be other than the sprout? It cannot. Since they are not an otherness established by way of their own entity, the sprout is not established inherently as produced from the seed, is not inherently produced from the seed. Therefore, you people who are holding that there is other production, give up that position that says things are produced from other. Richard, yeah.
Venerable, I just wanted to ask whether or not you wanted to take your break.
Yeah, let's go a little bit further. Thanks for mentioning that. So are we more or less following along? We kind of, even if it's not totally grokked, Don, some grokking has taken place. Some transformation has taken place.
It's a half grok.
Half grokked. Okay. And then so Jimba's translation says, since there is no intrinsically real otherness, no inherently existing otherness, it is not established that the sprout arises through its own essence from the seed. It's just, again, saying it's not inherently produced from the seed. So there's two different things here. We're talking about inherent existence of the seed, inherent existence of the sprout on one hand. It's actually about existence of entities. And then we're talking about whether the production itself is inherently existent. Because that was the main thrust of Nagarjuna's, these four theses, right? Things are not produced from self. They're not produced from other. They're not produced from both. They're not produced without a cause. So that's talking about two different things. One is talking about non-inherent existence of actual entities like seeds and sprouts. And one is talking about the non-inherent existence of processes like production. So the second chapter of Fundamental Wisdom talks about coming and going. There's no inherent coming and going. Immediately after, the first chapter. So talking about all the bodhisattvas, we've mentioned before, the bodhisattvas have to be familiar with a myriad, an incredible number of logical reasonings that they have at their disposal, because they're intending to stay within cyclic existence for up to 3 countless great eons for the sake of sentient beings, and they need to have that wisdom armor to be able to confront their own delusions when they start to arise, in all of these different ways. So here we're proving the two are intertwined. The fact that the seed is not inherently existent and the sprout is not inherently existent, that can infer that the production is not inherently existent. And also, if you prove that the production is not inherently existent, that would mean that the result of that production, there is no inherently existent sprout and so forth. So some things to think about. So you, the opponent of Prasangika, should discard the view that things arise from other. Okay. This demonstrates, continuing in Jimba's translation, this demonstrates that if the seed's separateness from the sprout, its difference, you say, why is he saying separate here, whereas he's saying difference before? Here, the Tibetan says tade. Dini, sabo nugu le tade par de rangshingi drupai yina. So it means the same thing as other. To demonstrate that if the seed's separateness from the sprout, if its otherness from the sprout were to exist by virtue of its intrinsic nature, if it were to be inherently other, inherently different than the sprout, given that what possesses intrinsic existence, inherent existence, can never cease to exist, then even at the time of the seed, it would exist as a substance separate from the sprout. Okay, who can unpack that? David? I think I saw some glimmer of understanding there.
Well, I thought I had it till this paragraph. And I kind of threw things apart. Sorry.
Anna?
I feel like it's saying that the appearance, the fact that you see a seed different from the sprout, you would think that it intrinsically exists just because you see both, but
It's entering into some new point here. I'll read again. This demonstrates that if the seed's otherness from the sprout were to exist inherently, I'm just changing the terminology, given that what possesses inherent existence, intrinsic existence, can never cease to exist. So what does that mean? If something were inherently existent, David?
So if it were inherently existent, the seed, and when the sprout came into being, the seed would still be there, would still remain.
Well, even not even talking about the sprout. If the seed was inherently existent, it would never cease to exist. Is that right? That's Prasangika explanation of inherent existence. Lower tenets would never accept that. They say things can change. They're so excuse me, Svatantrika position. All phenomena are inherently existent, and they appear that way, and that's good. That's correct. That's conventional reality, right? But Prasangika says that when we identify what inherent existence means, it means that that phenomena does not depend on anything else. If it doesn't depend on anything else, there's nothing that would bring about its change. If phenomena were inherently existent, they would forever remain in the state that they are now because they don't interact with anything else. In fact, you could actually prove emptiness by saying that phenomena are not inherently existent because they are impermanent. Have you ever heard that before?
You're not inherently existent.
Generally, you wouldn't think, oh, yeah, phenomena are not inherently existent because they're dependent arisings or blah, blah, blah. But if phenomena, well, let's say compounded phenomena, not all phenomena are impermanent, but impermanent, let's say compounded phenomena are not inherently existent because they are impermanent. If they were inherently existent, they would have to be permanent. Okay, so just aside. So this demonstrates that if the seed's separateness from the sprout were to exist by virtue of its intrinsic nature, given that what possesses inherent existence, intrinsic existence, can never cease to exist, it would remain, then even at the time of the seed, it would exist as a substance separate from the sprout. What is the it there?
The seed.
The seed, right? Given that what is never said, then even at the time of the seed would exist as a substance separate from the sprout. And in that case, and then he has a big phrase in brackets there, right? This is a little bit, doubt a little bit of the translation here. And in that case, bracket, given that the seed's existence as a separate substance presupposes the existence of its point of contrast, namely the sprout. Right? We've talked about this before. In order for something to be separate or different or other, the two things that you're contrasting, like Maitreya and Upagupta, they have to be simultaneous. So in that case, given that the seed's existence as a separate substance from the sprout presupposes the existence of its point of contrast, namely the sprout, then the two would be temporally simultaneous. Temporally. Is that, Diana, you want to weigh in? Am I pronouncing that right? Temporally simultaneous, meaning it's almost redundant. Simultaneous generally means in time, right? At the same time. So temporally simultaneous sounds a little redundant. So let me read you what Venerable Joan wrote. If it's that a seed's difference from a sprout existed inherently, inherent existence would never be averted. So that's what Jimpa said would never cease to exist. This is Dokpa. You could never get away from that state of inherent existence. It would always remain that way. If a seed's difference from a sprout existed inherently, that inherent existence would never be averted, would never change, would never cease to exist. It would always be different from the sprout. Therefore, even at the time of the seed would be a different substance from the sprout. This is just saying in different words the same Tibetan that we just went through in Jimpa's translation. It's still the same, right? Even at the time of the seed would be a different substance from the sprout, because we're going on the assumption that they're inherently other, inherently different. Okay. Therefore, because the two do not exist at the same time, now we're bringing in simultaneity. They don't exist at the same time. These two are indicated saying they are not other. They are not an otherness that is established by way of its own entity. They are not others in the sense of being inherently other. The assertion that the two, cause and result, are different entities conventionally. Oh yeah, we haven't read that in Jimpa's translation yet. Okay, so namely the sprout, then the two would become temporally simultaneous. Since this cannot be so, since they can't be simultaneous, as we've shown before, because the sprout can't appear until the seed is disintegrated and so forth, this demonstrates that these two things have no intrinsically existing otherness. Make sense? Okay. Nadine, you're not nodding as vigorously as some of the guys. Maybe it's male testosterone, they're nodding more. I don't know.
I wonder, do all the schools agree that otherness requires simultaneity? They all agree on it?
Yeah, so we'll be coming, when we talk about the actual meaning of this transformation of the seed into the sprout, there's going to be a quotation from the Rice Seedling Sutra, which is misinterpreted by the lower schools. It seems like the two pans of a scale seem to, when one is rising, the other is lowering. When that one rises, the other one lowers. They seem to be simultaneous. So some people misinterpret that as meaning that the seed and the sprout are simultaneous. But the Prasangika, talking about simultaneity, is not talking about the seed and the sprout being simultaneous, but that the disintegration of the seed is simultaneous with the production of the sprout. Those two processes are simultaneous, like the two ends of a scale. Okay, I think it'll become a little more clear as we go along. Let me just read a little bit further. Okay, so this is the point. This argument does not reject the view that cause and effect are different entities on the conventional level. So on the conventional level, for Prasangika, cause and effect are different entities. But if you try to investigate with ultimate analysis, are they inherently different? No, they're not inherently different. That's what we've just we were talking about in the realm of ultimate analysis, when you try to check about whether something can be found inherently, okay? This argument does not reject the view that cause and effect are different entities on the conventional level. It is critical to understand, Jimpa's turn of phrase, Tibetan just says, she guso, you should understand. It is critical to understand, or crucial to understand, that this argument touches upon the object of negation. In other words, i.e., the purported intrinsic otherness of cause and effect. And notice here he says purported, like sometimes we say hypothetical intrinsic otherness, right? They're not intrinsically or inherently other. That's just a hypothesis of these lower schools. That's their tenet, so to speak. So Venerable Joan translated, that's where I stopped in reading her translation. Therefore, because the two do not exist at the same time, these two are indicated, saying they are not others established by way of their own entity. The assertion that the two, cause and result, cause and effect, are different entities conventionally is not refuted. Prasangika would say conventionally, just the mere, the seed and the sprout are different entities conventionally. Conventionally means, remember when we talk about my example of the blacksmith, I have to figure out a more contemporary example. The blacksmith pounding on the horseshoes, and someone says, "Who's that horse?" He says, "Where's my horse?" "Oh, your horse is over there." Not analyzing within the aggregates of the horse, just labeling and being satisfied with just that. The seed is different than the sprout, conventionally, merely labeled as different. Okay. Take some time to think, to grok. The assertion that the two, cause and effect, are different entities conventionally is not refuted, but it should be understood, or as Jimpa says, it's critical to understand, as coming down to that in regard to the object of negation. The object of negation meaning inherent existence. Okay. Should we take a short break? Need a cup of tea? PB break? A couple of minutes. And I'm just going to take my picture off, but I'll leave my phone on if you'd like to debate with one another. What you heard that thump was me sitting down, like the some of the lamas who wrote about the suffering of aging said when you get old, trying to get up is like trying to pull a stake out of the ground. I don't mean a beef steak. I mean like a tent stake, this way to, so hard to get up. And sitting down is like a bag of potatoes falling. That was the thump viewer. My potato bag. Okay. How are we doing? Making sense? KT, you reading your notes? We're taking your blood pressure. What are you doing? Okay. Yeshi, Anna, everything okay? You following?
Well, I'm here.
You're here. You're reading along, you're sort of following?
I think it will be all stored in my subconsciousness.
Okay. Leaving karmic imprints.
Yes, yes.
Okay. Okay.
For asking.
That's good. That's good. Louise, how are you? Everything okay?
I'm good. I have a question about permanent things, but I think I'll wait till Monday. I don't want to derail the topic.
Okay. Usually you could say permanent things, but generally we'll use the word thing for ngopo, which means impermanent.
Oh, oops.
So
Sorry.
you could say,
Okay. Wrong word.
You could say, conventionally we say permanent things, impermanent things. So phenomena that are permanent phenomena and impermanent phenomena. Okay, we'll look forward to that on Monday.
Okay.
Okay, if you want. Okay. So how are we doing? Making sense? Okay. So now, Prasangika has just, what have we done? We've refuted that things can arise from an inherently existent other when cause and effect are regarded as sequential. Okay, so that's sort of like the actual, what was the main outline there before that? The actual refutation, specific refutation of arising from other, and the actual refutation we just went over. Now, those people who were offended by Prasangika's refutation, they're going to object to that. And so it's Prasangika's chore to listen to their objection and then to reject that. Okay, rejecting objections raised against the refutations. So now we get to verse 618. Very famous example. You may say, like the up and down of two sides of a scale, up and down, yeah. To men, you could say up and down, say the rising and falling of the two sides of a scale, which cannot but be seen to take place at the same time. Doris, maybe, it sounds like double, cannot but be seen. It's saying, come on, you've got to see they're simultaneous, the rising and falling of the two sides of a scale, right? Like that, the arising and ceasing of the produced and the producer occur together. That's the third line. Does this have the fourth line? Yeah, it puts the fourth line here. In I think in FPMT translation, she puts the fourth line at another place because the commentary comes a little bit later. So you may say that like the rising and falling of the two sides of a scale, which have to be seen to be simultaneous. Come on. Like that, the arising and ceasing of the produced and the producer occur together. So who's saying this?
Lower schools. not prasangikas.
Yeah. Yeah, looks like that. It says opponent. And I'll read the fourth line, even though it comes a little bit later. Even if they are simultaneous, there is no simultaneity of seed and sprout here. That might be the answer by the Prasangika, I'm not sure. So anyway, opponent. You may say that our statement that the sprout does not exist simultaneously to the seed is incorrect. Is that right? John, are you back? The FPMT translation says, propounding sprout and seed do not exist simultaneously is unsuitable. That's how Venerable Joan translated that. That sounds more like what's being said here. It's incorrect to say that the sprout and the seed do not exist simultaneously. That's the position of the opponent. They do exist simultaneously, the seed and the sprout, right? That's the position of the others. Thupten Jinpa has it, you may say that our statement that the sprout does not exist simultaneously to the seed is incorrect. Isn't Jinpa's translation saying something different? Following? No? Nadine, you say no? Same thing? Explain.
Same thing, I think. Prasangika say the sprout and the seed do not exist simultaneously, and the opponent says the opposite. They
Right.
exist simultaneously.
The seed and the sprout, right?
Yes.
So here,
Now
Jinpa's
they argue about this.
Yeah, always arguing. Yeah, like husband and wife. So Jinpa's translation says, you may say, so if that's the opponent saying to Prasangika, right? You Prasangikas may say that our statement, our non-Prasangika statement, that the sprout does not exist simultaneously to the seed, but that's not their position. Their position is that the sprout does exist simultaneously to the seed. Let me see some of the masculine energy here. Mikhail, what do you think?
Yeah, I'm not quite, I'm not sure. No, it's
Okay, yeah, you have
confusing.
to think about it a little.
Yeah.
What do you think, Stephen?
I find the construction of that sentence very confusing, Venerable George.
Yeah.
And also the tag that says opponent at the beginning. Opponent.
Right.
So that's the opponent is saying that. That's coming in the opponent's voice, right? That first sentence?
That's what I understand Jinpa's translation to be, right? Okay. So let's see.
You as the Prasangika, may say that the opponent's statement that the sprout does not exist simultaneously to the seed is incorrect. To me, that sounds backwards.
Right. It sounds backwards to me too, because the opponent would be saying our statement that the sprout does exist simultaneously to the seed. You, Prasangika, could say that is incorrect. That I would agree with if you took out that not in Thupten Jinpa's translation. You, Prasangikas, may say that our statement that the sprout does exist simultaneously to the seed is incorrect. What do you think, David?
– Well, in just reading ahead a little bit, which I'm not, I don't often do that. But
disclaimer. Okay.
But in reading ahead a little bit, it sounds like they're just trying to split hairs. Like you say that they don't exist simultaneously, but they're trying to show that they do. But I think then Chandrakirti later on in his response shows that you can't find the exact point where they exist simultaneously. But I may be wrong. Maybe I shouldn't have read ahead.
Right. No, you're right. You're right.
Yeah, okay.
So let's see how Venerable Joan translates that. This is on page 115. Do you hear that knocking? That's a, what do you call it? The woodpecker on my cabin. Okay. Hello. Okay. So where is this on that page? So this is on the beginning of page 115 in Venerable Joan's translation, dispelling disputes regarding the refutation. So she has the first three lines of the stanza, 618 A, B, and C. And then it says, it doesn't say opponent. It says propounding, quote, sprout and seed do not exist simultaneously is unsuitable. Propounding that sprout and seed do not exist simultaneously is unsuitable. Who would be saying that?
But the whole of the paragraph is in quotes, suggesting that's who is talking.
Right. Well, okay. It's not the whole paragraph. It's that phrase, sprout and seed do not exist simultaneously. They're in a quote. Oh, yeah. The whole thing has got a quote.
Yeah.
Right. So in Tibetan, it ends with Medo Shena. Shena means if someone says, so that's why Jimpa translated it as, what did he translate it as? The opponent, what did he translate? The opponent.
You may say.
Yeah.
You may say.
So let me just read what Venerable Joan said. Propounding that sprout and seed do not exist simultaneously is unsuitable, or you could say is incorrect. That would be the view of the lower tenets, right? That the seed and the sprout do exist simultaneously. To say that the sprout and seed do not exist simultaneously is wrong, they're saying. They do exist simultaneously because just as, for example, it is not that the rising one and the falling of the other, the rising of one pan of the scale and the falling of the other are not simultaneous. It's not the case that they're not simultaneous. I'm feeling empathy for Doris, who hates these double negatives. It is not the case that they are not simultaneous. That means they are simultaneous. Come on, Prasangika. The rising of one and the falling of the other are simultaneous. That is, they are seen to be simultaneous. Likewise, because the two actions of production and cessation, respectively, of that which is to be produced, what's that? That's the sprout. The sprout is what is to be produced, right? The sprout. And the producer, the seed, that is ceasing or disintegrating. The seed is disintegrating, the sprout is being produced. And the producer, the seed, are at the same time, are simultaneously. The seed, the seed and the sprout are also simultaneous. They're agreeing that the disintegration of the seed and the production of the sprout are simultaneous, but they're saying in addition, and in addition to that, the seed and the sprout are also simultaneous. Therefore, since they exist as otherness, as others, because that simultaneity was what was required for being other, right? For other generation, other production, they had to be simultaneous. So they're saying it's not only is the cessation of the seed, or the transformation of the seed and the production of the sprout simultaneous, but also the seed and the sprout are simultaneous. So therefore, it's okay to say that the sprout is produced from an inherently other entity, namely the seed. The sprout is produced from the seed, which is inherently other, right? Okay, so I'm not sure. Maybe someone else can grok it, but I think Jimpa added an extra not in that first sentence. I think it should say, you may say that our statement that the sprout does exist simultaneously to the seed is incorrect. You prasangikas. For example, like the up and down of two sides of a scale, the rising and falling, which cannot be seen to take place, which cannot but be seen to take place at the same time. Means you have to see that they're taking place at the same time. The twin acts of rising and ceasing, respectively, of the producer. Well, that should be the ceasing, should be the ceasing of the producer, the seed, and the arising of the produced, the sprout, occur together in temporal terms. Therefore, the seed and the sprout too can be said to be simultaneous. Okay, so that's the opponent's, what was it calling his objection to the Prasangika refutation. Prasangika said the seed and the sprout are not simultaneous, so they can't be other. They can't be inherently other. And he's saying that they can. Okay. We on the same wavelength, though? Doris, how are you doing? Double negatives enough for you?
I wasn't actually here for them, but I'm
okay.
I'll have to look at it again. I'm back.
Yeah, you'll listen to it later. You can revel in the double negatives. Louise, what do you think?
I think that's a good, as long as you don't delve into what the meaning of inherently existence means, it's a good argument, you know? But if you start to analyze, well, what does that actually mean? You know, inherent existence as far as, you know, one doesn't change, what we went over just before.
Right.
And
So
that destroys it.
Right. So the Prasangika has already, yeah, of course, the lower tenets think this is eminently reasonable that they're simultaneous. And certainly the Prasangika would say that the disintegration of the seed, or in other words, this transformation, is simultaneous with the production of the sprout. Those are simultaneous, but Prasangika would not say that the seed is simultaneous with the sprout. Okay.
Well,
okay. Richard, what's that on your foot? Do you have some kind of Russian wool?
I have a dog.
Oh, I thought it was some nice big sock on your foot.
No, just a sleeping dog.
Just your dog. Let sleeping dogs lie. Okay, so Stephen.
Yeah, thank you, Venerable. I guess how I feel about this is I think it's just a bad analogy, because a scale, it's measuring heavier and lighter, so it's a relativity. It has nothing to do with production.
Yeah, so it's not talking about the measurement. It's just talking about, well, you could use the example of a teeter-totter. That's what I remember them being called when I was a kid. What's a more correct term nowadays?
Seesaw.
Seesaw. You know, there's a hinge in the middle. One skinny kid sits on one end, the heavy kid sits on the other end. So whatever, it goes up, it can go up and down. If you're about the same weight, you can kind of go back and forth. So it can be seen that when one side goes down, the other side goes up. They're simultaneous. So why are they even bringing this up? Because there's a quotation that the lower tenets also accept from the Rice Seedling Sutra that brings up this example of the scale. And it's misinterpreted by the lower tenets. And there is a PDF that, Doris, has it already been posted?
Richard's going to do this for us today.
I didn't catch what you said.
Richard's it
Oh,
is
Richard's going to do it. Richard's going to do it.
Yes.
Okay. So there's I comprise something from a very nice commentary by Yeshitapke, I think, right? The Geshe who teaches at Ron, do you know, he sometimes teaches at Shravasti, right? One of Thupten Chodron's, Venerable Thupten Chodron's teachers, my teacher also, great Lama. So he wrote a commentary on the Rice Seedling Sutra and with regard to karma, and I've quoted part of his analysis of that along with the translation of that passage of the Rice Seedling Sutra.
Yeah, he's actually doing commentary on that right now on Tuesdays through Savasti Abbey, and he's in Texas. He's at some, I don't know the name of the Dharma Center there.
Oh, so he's actually teaching the Rice Seedling Sutra at Shravasti.
Right, on Tuesdays at 9 a.m.
So are those being recorded? And
yes, they're posted to YouTube.
So if you'd like to listen to some of Yeshitapke's, he was a Lama that I met at, heard of him many times when I was at Sarnath, studying at the Institute of Higher Tibetan Studies there. And he actually came to my room and spent several hours going over various texts on recognizing the object of negation. So I always felt very, very close to him. He's recognized by many as being a very great scholar. So at any rate, that is going to be, is being posted by Richard. Richard, where is that being posted? In the chat or on the Facebook or what?
It's on chat, and it's also in my Dropbox folder. Doris, did you post it to Facebook as well?
I will be doing that after class, depending on which of the PDFs we get to today.
Okay, so you can see at the top 7-limb prayer that I mentioned, the 7-limb prayer of Padmasambhava, which is so powerful, invoking Padmasambhava. And then at the end, scale analogy, and that's from the Rice Seedling Sutra. Fortunately, Doris corrected my misspelling of the word analogy. I had A-N-O, anology, analogy. Okay. So you could read that at your leisure, and we'll go over that on Monday. So let's go over this again. The opponent is saying, Prasangika, you're wrong to say that when we say the sprout is simultaneously to the seed, you're wrong to criticize that. For example, like the rising and falling of the two sides of a scale, they have to be seen at the same time. The twin acts of rising and ceasing of the producer and the produced, they are simultaneous. Therefore, the seed and the sprout also can be seen to be simultaneous. So they're making that extra assumption. Prasangika would agree with the first part, that the disintegration and the production are simultaneous, but not that the seed and the sprout are simultaneous. So then Prasangika answers, response, it is inappropriate, it's just wrong to employ the analogy of the scale to conceive the simultaneity of the ceasing of the seed and the arising of the sprout. Okay, some subtlety here. For even if the ascending and descending movements of the two sides of the scale are simultaneous, Prasangika would say those are simultaneous. there is no simultaneity here between the seed and the sprout, the reference of that analogy. So the analogy does not hold. So Venerable Joan translates that. If through the analogy of the scale, the two actions of production and destruction of the two, the seed and the sprout, are conceived to occur at the same time, that would be unsuitable. That's talking a little, the Prasangika view is a little bit more subtle than that. They're saying the process of destruction and the process of arising are simultaneous. Here it's not talking about the process, it's just saying the action of production and destruction of the two, to conceive that they are simultaneous would be unsuitable. Even if it were, as in the analogy of the scale, that the two, the higher and lower ends of the scale occur at the same time, the rising and lowering occur at the same time, whereby the two actions of rising and falling coincide, that is, they occur at the same time. Here, the actual meaning of the analogy is not suitable, since the seed and the sprout do not exist at the same time. Okay, how are we doing? Not completely clear. What do you think? Subhash?
Venerable George, I'm good with this. I actually love the analogy. I think this is a terrific analogy which goes to the heart of the matter over here, right? They said the purported intrinsic otherness of cause and effect. Right. I think the analogy hits this straight on, because it says that they are not simultaneous. This is when one disintegrates, the other arises. Those may be simultaneously, but the intrinsic nature of the two, the seed and the sprout, are not simultaneous. So I really like this analogy.
Yeah, I do too. Yeah, I'm all for this analogy. It's Buddha's analogy from the rice seedling sutra anyway. So you got to go for the Buddha. Okay, so let's continue. So then Jimpa, the last line says, the following karika, the following stanza, what is this, karika 19, is stated to show how this analogy does not hold. The analogy of the scale, okay? For as you contend, so this is a Prasangika talking to the non-Prasangika. For you guys, that which is arising is about to arise, so does not yet exist. So what does arising mean? And what is about to arise? What does that mean? John, are you there? Are you off? You listening? Okay, he's not there. So, keishinpa, when you have the word shin after a verb, like kewa means produce or generate, keishinpa means generating or producing or in the process of being produced. And then it says, gelte keishinpa de kewa kela chukpe yomin shing. So it uses keishinpa and kepa. So kepa just means production, and keishinpa means being produced or in the process of being produced or about to arise. As Jimpa translates what I produce is translated as production as arising. So for you, For as you contend, that which is being produced, or in the process of being produced, or in the process of arising, is about to rise. So therefore, because it's in the process of arising, it's not yet arisen. Okay. So you biblical scholars, you New Testament scholars may be able to use this in your Bible classes about Easter or something, but whether, in the process of arising, if it's already arisen or something. Anyway, I'm joking. So, okay, second line says, while that which is ceasing, what would be that? What would be ceasing here?
Seed.
The seed, right? While that which is ceasing, though existent, is about to disintegrate. So one is not, if you're talking about, you started from the seed transforming into the sprout, you've got the sprout is in the process of arising, is not yet existent. But the seed, which is in the process of disintegration, hasn't totally disintegrated, so it still exists. The seed exists at the point when the sprout does not yet exist. Right? Okay, good. Mikhail's nodding. At least someone.
And when the sprout exists, then the seed is no more.
Right. Don put his head down, so I'm not going to ask him again. Okay, that's okay. While that which is ceasing, though existent, that means the seed, is about to disintegrate. If this is so, how can such a case be likened to a scale? It makes no sense to speak of an arising when there is no producer. Well, Prasangika, I don't know. So how does Venerable Joan translate that? She translated on page 115, about the middle, verse 619 ABC. If that being produced is approaching production, whereby it does not exist, you could say whereby it does not yet exist, because it's approaching production. And in addition, that being ceased, namely the seed, which is asserted to be approaching destruction, does exist, because it hasn't yet been destroyed, right? At that time, how are they similar to a scale? So again, she puts the fourth line that Jimpa puts immediately here. She puts the fourth line further on in the commentary, because that's the statement that Jimpa makes there. It makes no sense to speak of it arising when there's no producer. That has its own logic that's coming later. So mainly, this is commentary now to the first three lines there. Okay. So Jimpa's translation, let's see. I think we go a little bit further. So sort of commenting on this verse, it began, for as you contend, that which is arising is about to arise. So it's commenting on that. For as you contend, that which is called arising, because it is about to arise and exists as a future sprout, that would be kind of almost Samkhya position, exists as a future sprout, or maybe we would say there's a future sprout. It does not yet exist in the present. Maybe you could say it exists as a future sprout because it's going to exist, but it doesn't exist in the present, right? While that which is ceasing, namely the seed, though existent, is about to disintegrate is not yet disintegrated. It's about to disintegrate. So it does exist in the present. It hasn't disintegrated yet. If this is so, in that at the moment when the sprout is about to arise, the seed is present, but the sprout is still off in the future, is not yet existent. How can such a case, the temporal status of the seed and sprout, be likened to the ascending and descending sides of a scale, which are simultaneous? Here, they're not, in this case of the seed and the sprout, they're not simultaneous because they don't yet, one doesn't exist when the other exists. When the seed exists, the sprout does not yet exist. When the sprout exists, the seed is already non-existent. So it can't be likened to the ascending and descending sides of a scale. Again, this Tibetan Sanskrit kind of way of writing, how can it be? It cannot. They cannot be. That's baloney. It's just wrong, right? Okay. Because when the twin movements of the two sides of a scale are present, what does it say? When the twin movements of the two sides of the scale are present, the movements rising and falling are present. One thing is rising, one side of the scale is rising, the other is falling, or the teeter-totter. What was the word? Seesaw. Seesaw. Maybe you'll notice the next time you take your kids to the park, or you take your sister or brother's kids to the park, you go to the park and you see the seesaw, you'll be thinking, oh, wait a second. You'll have some profound thoughts, much more than the other mothers and fathers who are watching that. Because when the twin movements of the two sides of the scale are present, the ascending and descending of the scale also exists simultaneously. Yeah, we say that, you can see they're simultaneous. However, in contrast to that, opposite to that, there is no simultaneity between the seed and the sprout. Don, are you grokking this?
I am grokking. I'm wondering where the future seed, the future sprout that they say the future sprout exists, where does it exist?
Yeah, it exists as a future. So the topic of the past, present, and future, shorthand 3 times, there's a present. All of the schools have their own interpretation of the 3 times. What is past, what is present, what is future? The Prasangika view will be, this is one of the uncommon, Lama Tsong Khapa said, what were the 17 uncommon points of the Prasangika is their presentation of the 3 times. So we'll have to wait a little bit before we go into that, but that you can say that the future exists of something at the present, but it doesn't exist as a present entity. Okay, so leave it at that for the time being. Okay, so can I read one more paragraph? Yeah, let me just read this last paragraph and we'll go over this again next week and on Monday. These passages show, what passages? There were 2 stanzas that were mentioned, 2 karikas, right? These passages show that citing the example of the 2 sides of a scale, one ascending and the other descending, is inappropriate for demonstrating how the seed and sprout are simultaneous, because their 2 acts, the act of the seed and the sprout, ceasing and arising, happen to occur simultaneously. again, I think that Jimpa's put in parentheses something incorrect there. It's saying, these passages show the citing of the example of the two sides of the scale, one side rising, the other descending, ascending and descending, is inappropriate for demonstrating how the seed and sprout are simultaneous, because their two acts, the two acts of the sides of the scale, not the ceasing and arising of the sprout, happen to occur simultaneously. Do you see that?
Isn't it saying that this analogy is causing some confusion, because the seizing of the seed and the sprout and the rising of the sprout, they are simultaneous. That's agreed for prasangikas. But not the seed and the sprout themselves. They are not simultaneous. That's how I read it.
Think about it. We'll go over this again. I'll read the next sentence, or two, if it needs to. They do not demonstrate, these passages, these shalokas that we talked about, these karikas, they do not demonstrate, however, that if two acts happen to occur at the same time, this necessarily means that the two things whose acts we are speaking of should themselves exist simultaneously at that very moment. Okay, maybe that's leaning more toward Mikhail's understanding. Maybe that's okay, ceasing and arising. Okay, so a lot of grist for your Dharma mill, your Dharma millstones. What do you think? Interesting. I'm kind of with Suvash. I'm excited about this analogy. So take a reading of the scale analogy file, the PDF that is in the chat. Do all of you see that? So first of all, although in Geshe Topke's, I don't know what I called him before, Geshe Topke's translation of the Rice Seedling Sutra, he has a translation by another author, but I didn't find that translation to be as precise as the 84,000 translation. 84,000 is the name of that organization. Was it one of the Khyentse Rinpoches started, that is translating all of the sutras, and is about to begin in a year or two the translation of the Shastras, the commentaries. So that translation I preferred. So I put that first, and then Geshe Topke's analysis of that section about the scale. And I think that will be a nice, how to say, that will be a nice counterpart, a nice addition to the explanation here in Gompa Rapsel of this. So it's going to be, Gompa Rapsel only quotes just two lines of the Rice Seedling Sutra, assuming you already know it, right? Okay. So before we finish, how are we doing? Any questions? Okay, no questions. I'll have questions for you on Monday then. I hope you'll come. Richard, would you be kind enough to, oh, wait, so first Suvash has a question.
Venerable George, I don't have a question, but today we spent time on an analogy, and I just want to mention that in the Pali Canon, the Buddha is just amazing. He has this ability to make comparisons. He uses metaphors and similes, and they are so powerful, right? And in so many different contexts. Very often we hear the goldsmith, but the goldsmith is just one. There are numerous others.
Right.
And he, the five hindrances, there are lists, and I've actually taken courses which are just focused on his analogies in the Pali Canon.
Right, right. So it's not only in the Pali Canon that the Buddha gave analogies, also in the Mahayana Canon. But yeah, good point.
And what I've noticed is that they are just not simple, analogies. They are actually very meaningful. They are and they bring out, they highlight something that very often I didn't comprehend on that particular topic.
Right.
So he makes the analogy, and the analogy illustrates a facet of that topic that was not evident to me. So I just thought I'll give a plug in for that.
Yeah, yeah. Big plug for the Buddha. I agree with you. Yeah, and even in Christianity, Christ was often spoke in, what was the terminology? Parables, right? Kind of same thing, right? Nadine.
Thank you very much, George. I have one more question. Is it correct that the reason why this discussion about simultaneity takes place is because other production requires simultaneity?
Right. Well, other production, when we talk about the 4 types of production, presupposes understanding that it's inherent production. For Prasangika, there is a mere other production. Although there is production from other on the conventional level, merely imputed sprout arises from the merely imputed seed, which is merely imputed as other, conventionally other. The seed, come on, the seed and the sprout are other, conventionally, but not when you investigate with ultimate analysis. So yeah, a lot of subtlety, a lot of things. And as I said before, all of these different reasonings, the Bodhisattvas cherish, and they, as armor for their wisdom, to encounter all of the myriad kinds of problems that they would have to, in helping sentient beings for 3 countless great eons. They need to have much more ways of analyzing emptiness than the Shravakas and Pratika Buddhas, who are aiming to get out of samsara, achieve nirvana very, very quickly without remaining around and dealing with all of these things. Okay. So, Richard, if you'd like to put up the dedication prayers, I think we know some of them by heart, maybe not the long request for Lama Zopa Rinpoche's quick reappearance.
Venerable, I have an older version of the prayers. I'm trying to get the most recent ones. Just give me one moment, please.
Okay, good. Anna has a question. No?
I was offering to put this in the chat, the newer prayers.
Okay,
I've got
good.
them. I've got them. Thank you very much.
Excellent. Okay, fantastic.
Okay.
Wow. Cyber savvy Sangha.
Okay. Now I just have to share screen, and I should be okay.
There we go. Doris, you look really.
There it is. Here we go.
Okay, there we go.
Can you see that? Can you see them?
Yeah. Okay.
Yes.
Make them a little bit larger.
So yeah. So go down from there. Further down to the dedication. There we go. Gewadi Nyurduda Lama Sangye Drugyurne Droa Chikyang Malupa De Sala Khapa Sho. The Malupa in the third line is emphasized, Lama Zopa Rinpoche used to emphasize, not leaving out even one, without exception, all sentient beings, even your enemies. Changchub Semchog Rinpoche, Pake Panam Ke Gyurchik, Ke Pan Yampa Me Payang, Gone Gong Tu Pelbar Sho. And then below that, I think should be just below that, right, Richard? There we go. Peerless teacher and assembly of children of the victorious ones, you bodhisattvas, as well as the Shravakas and Pratika Buddhas, Conqueror Losang Drakpa, Lama Tsongkhapa, the spiritual father, and your sons, Gyaltsab-je and Kejub-je, together with your lineage, all objects of refuge of the infinite realms, please bestow upon us now the virtue and goodness to accomplish this prayer. In upholding and spreading the Muni's precious and complete teachings through explanation and practice, you, Lama Zopa, were the armor of patience that is never discouraged. Incomparable Venerable Guru, to you I make request. You were the sole gateway through which all benefit and happiness emerge, while striving exclusively for the welfare of the conqueror's teachings and for the welfare of mother living beings. You suddenly departed to peace. At this, I lost hope. Nevertheless, through the undeceiving truths of the oceanic blessings of the three jewels, as well as the great waves of bodhicitta of the bodhisattvas, the mind generation of the children of the victorious ones, by those truths, may the smile of a new reincarnation swiftly beam in glory for us fortunate disciples. And for all of our spiritual friends, the Dalai Lama, the Serkon Rinpoches, the Ling Rinpoches that have been giving teachings recently, you who are my eyes for viewing all the infinite scriptures, supreme gateways for the fortunate ones traveling to liberation, engaging with skillful means moved by mercy, illuminating spiritual friends, please live long and stable lives. Wow, thank you so much. I enjoyed very much. I think you guys, your apparatus is getting fine-tuned. You're like a Maserati, or some cases maybe a Bentley. Some of you are more conservative, some of you are more racy. But I really appreciate your questions and your insight and your thinking. Look forward to seeing some of you, hopefully many of you, on Monday. Take a look at the PDFs, and certainly next Saturday we will continue. Take care. See you soon.
Thank you.
Thank you, Venerable George.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Venerable.
Venerable George.
Thank you all.
Thank you,
Thank
Venerable George.
you.
Thanks, Richard.
Bye, everyone.
Thanks, Richard.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.